Did you ever hear the Latin phrase caveat emptor? It means let the buyer beware. Well, sometimes people don't listen to that maxim and they get something called buyer's remorse. And that's a feeling of regret after you've purchased something and like regret having purchased it. It's typically associated with spending too much on something you want, but kind of know you can't really afford. Seems like a good idea at the time. And then, that was a bad idea. Or maybe a long term investment, such as a car or real estate, or there's something else that I think falls under this into this category. What is it again? Oh, yeah, yeah. I got it. Voting for an insurrectionist to be president of your country. No matter what bizarrely cozy good feelings you had about Donald, which honestly I do not understand. Um, maybe some of you, I mean, in the lead up to the election, for some reason you thought, hey, that's my guy. Eggs are expensive. Um, maybe you're feeling a little disillusioned now. Well, actually, some of those voters really are feeling disillusioned, and it's starting to hit them very hard. And it's only been 2 months. So Joe Biggs, former Proud Boys leader, is struggling. What a shame. After his sentence was commuted by Donald, he wasn't pardoned. His sentence was commuted. So that means that he still has a record as a convicted felon and is classified as a domestic terrorist, but he didn't have to serve any more prison time. I personally, well, actually, I don't know how personally I would feel because I'm not a convicted felon. I'm not a seditionist, and I didn't commit domestic terrorism against my country. So I can't really speak with that with any kind of experiential knowledge. But Joe Biggs had something to say. Let's play that clip.
President Donald Trump overturned the biggest single prosecution in American history by issuing a mass pardon of 1,500 people for their role in the attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. But a much smaller group of 14 people, including Joe Biggs, had their sentences commuted, not pardoned, leaving their crimes on record. I'm extremely disappointed in him, Biggs, a former leader of the far-right Proud Boys, who received one of the longest sentences of the January 6th attackers, says of Trump. Biggs was sentenced to 17 years for seditious conspiracy for his role in the attack on the Capitol. Despite only serving 4 years of that sentence, Biggs complains that his life is still on hold until he can get a pardon.
Oh, I don't know what to say except fuck off, you seditionist. Really? Talk about looking a gift horse in the mouth, with all due apologies to horses. Although this was having a sentence commuted instead of getting a pardon does have its downsides, thankfully. I don't know, saving yourself 13 years in prison, I think that would sort of wipe everything else out. But no. This particular thin-skinned seditionist wants it all. But he lost access to his veterans benefits and pension because of his conviction for seditious conspiracy, the second most serious crime against the United States of America, short of treason, which is what Donald committed. But the Supreme Court, the corrupt, illegitimate Supreme Court, was totally cool with that. So now poor Biggs is financially dependent on his family, so he's not a manly man anymore. Because nothing says manly man like, I don't know, attacking a bunch of defenseless people in the Capitol and desecrating that building. Prosecutors identified Biggs as a leader and instigator in the January 6th attack, taking deliberate actions to disrupt the electoral vote count. Like I said, madly. Biggs is bitter that he only received a commutation while others, including Enrique Tarrio, got full pardons. And I mean, I don't care about him, and I hope he cries on a daily basis. But it is a little random. Enrique Tarrio's crimes were just as serious. So I don't know what to tell you, but nobody cares. I guess that I do know what to tell you. Nobody cares. He feels abandoned by MAGA figures who once championed him. Well, because you're a loser now. After attending CPAC and meeting Steve Bannon, Biggs realized that right-wing media only used him for content and discarded him once he was no longer useful. Yeah, that's how it usually works with these things. Loyalty is a one-way street, and you were going the wrong way down that street, moron and seditionist. Before we go further, please like and share this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already done so. We're pushing to get to 350,000 subscribers, and every little bit helps. As independent media, your support helps us reach more people so we can grow this together. Joe Biggs is just one person affected by Donald. Multiply that by 300,000, and you've got the number of Venezuelan immigrants at risk of having their lives impacted by the Trump regime. In February 2025, Donald revoked temporary protected status for Venezuelan immigrants, and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem justified the decision by claiming conditions in Venezuela had improved. Throughout Florida, which is home to the largest Venezuelan immigrant community in the United States, overwhelmingly supported Donald Trump in the 2024 election, but now feels betrayed by his crackdown on the temporary protected status of Venezuelan immigrants. Some voters still support him, but are disillusioned, while activists say they were used by Republicans. Play the clip.
You supported Donald Trump, even though you couldn't vote for him.
Yes. I believe there is a large community of Venezuelans who did.
What she didn't expect is for those policies to throw her life in limbo and stoke fear in her community. Carol is one of hundreds of thousands of Venezuelan immigrants who were granted temporary protected status, or TPS, under the Biden administration. President Trump wiped that away for all Venezuelans. When they said the TPS is going to be revoked, were you surprised?
Yes, totally. And this was a hard blow because practically the same day he took office, he went against Venezuelans. It seemed personal.
Yeah, that sucks, doesn't it? It seemed personal. It was totally cool when it was Venezuelans, not me. But now it's affecting my whole community. Yeah, it does seem personal, doesn't it? Venezuelan holders of temporary protected status have sued the Trump regime to block deportation, citing the decision as, quote, arbitrary and capricious, unquote. Meanwhile, fear has gripped the community, with many avoiding public spaces, fearing detention and deportation. Yes, it's personal. Watch this report from NBC6 in South Florida.
Good people, I pay my taxes, I follow the rules.
Alvaro Duran is a TPS recipient. He's in the process of obtaining a green card because he's married to a U.S. citizen. However, his mother and siblings are now in limbo.
Go back to Venezuela is not an option.
Not an option for hundreds of thousands of people who say they may face jail time or retaliation for speaking out against the Maduro regime that remains in power. In a TPS termination notice, DHS said in Venezuela there are notable improvements in several areas such as the economy, public health, and crime that allow for these nationals to be safely returned to their home country.
Conditions have not changed, actually have getting worse.
At a press conference in Doral Monday, Venezuelan Americans denounced the Trump administration and South Florida Republicans.
More than betrayed, beyond betrayed. They used us. They actually, during the campaign, and I don't want to make this political, but during the campaign, the elected officials from the Republican Party, they actually told us that he was not going to touch the documented people.
Well, why did you believe him? There's literally nothing this man has ever done that would suggest he is believable or trustworthy, and yet people kept giving him the benefit of the doubt. With TPS holders comprising a large portion of Doral's workforce and business owners, city officials warn that deportations could devastate the local economy, including Donald's own Doral Golf Resort project. Vice Mayor Maureen Porras and City Councilman Rafael Pinheiro, both people who voted for Donald, are calling for a solution. Well, we had one back in November. That opportunity has passed. Despite previously taking a hard stance against Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro, the Trump regime has restarted deportation flights to Venezuela and detained some migrants at Guantanamo Bay. Some Venezuelans are now questioning their past support for Donald just now questioning. And again, it feels like this is the conundrum for our time. How much does it take for people to see what is actually going on, especially when it's been going on for years? He has been telling us who he is forever. And yet, people choose to believe that it doesn't apply to them. I swear, it's like people who smoke cigarettes and think, yeah, I'm not going to get cancer. It's the same thing. How much more evidence does one need? Well, apparently, the only evidence that matters is if it's actually happening to you, because we have become such a selfish, self-centered people. Our ability to empathize has become so narrowed by the circumstances in which we've been living that part of our humanity has almost been eradicated entirely. It isn't just Florida where voters are starting to see what's actually going on. People in Michigan who voted for Donald are also feeling regret. Many Arab and Muslim voters in Michigan, and this drives me crazy, who were frustrated, rightfully so, with what I will say was the egregious failure of the Biden administration to put conditions upon its support for Israel, or I should say specifically Benjamin Netanyahu's government in Israel. It was a horrific miscalculation and misstep and worse. I understand that frustration. I shared it. But what I also knew was that Donald would be so much worse. And yet, support shifted from Biden to Donald in the hopes that he would fulfill his false promise to bring peace to the Middle East. And that is what helped him secure that very important swing state. Play the clip.
Days before the last presidential election, Donald Trump was the invited guest at the Great Commoner restaurant in Dearborn, Michigan. Albert Abbas says he extended that invitation, a decision he is now reflecting on, given all that has happened in the last 24 hours.
Many in the community are at a loss for words. Last night was a very rough night for most of us.
Abbas is Arab American and one of a number of Democrats who voted for Trump. Abbas says he hoped Trump would do more than President Joe Biden did to help Palestinians suffering in Gaza. Abbas says not only does he feel betrayed, he's hearing from a number of people angered over his past support of Trump.
People were really, really frustrated, and I don't think there's anyone to blame. At the end of the day, as Arab Americans or Muslims, we really didn't have much of a choice.
Well, I don't think that's true. You did have a choice and you chose. Just, again, giving Donald Trump, of all people, the benefit of the doubt. That was a choice. And I'm sorry to say, you were wrong. And you should take responsibility for that. Since taking office, Donald has alarmed Arab and Muslim supporters with statements about the Middle East, including a bizarre proposal to turn Gaza into a seaside resort under U.S. control by relocating the entire Palestinian population. This idea has been largely rejected by Arab leaders, but that didn't stop Donald from posting an absolutely freakish AI-generated video depicting him sunbathing, which, I mean, come on. Things are bad enough. With Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in a fictional Trump Gaza. This angered many of his Arab and Muslim voters, with some supporters saying they regretted their vote, and it's not even April. Donald's rhetoric is now jeopardizing Michigan Republicans' effort to maintain Arab and Muslim support ahead of the 2026 midterms. Michigan business leader Faye Niemer called for Donald to retract the Gaza video, but his campaign instead doubled down, calling him, please, I'm hoping I don't choke on this word, a visionary. Well, I mean, I guess if by visionary you mean somebody who has a very strong vision of how to turn America into an authoritarian dictatorship? Sure. So destroying Gaza and making sure that support among Arabs and Muslims for Republicans erodes ahead of the midterms, which is great. Donald also has his sights set on another new dream: underfunded schools. Yesterday, he signed an executive order aimed at dismantling the Department of Education. Fully eliminating it, however, would require or should require Congress's approval. Following the signing, Senator Bill Cassidy, a Republican of Louisiana, who's chair of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, announced on Twitter that he would introduce legislation to achieve Donald's goal. That's called the other shoe dropping. Since the department can only be shut down with congressional approval, I will support the president's goals by submitting legislation to accomplish this as soon as possible, unquote. In case you were wondering if these fascist Republicans in the Senate are capable of doing their jobs and exercising their constitutional duties to the American people. They are not. They're not capable of it. They are not interested in it. Is this what voters who voted for Donald voted for? Watch this clip from Kentucky educators who did vote for Donald in 2024.
What kind of poverty are you talking about with some of these kids?
You're going to create your own.
I would be confident in saying that when they leave on Friday, they may not eat again until Monday.
For School Superintendent Tom Gambrill, funding is more than just books. The elementary and middle school principal is Jennifer Blankenship.
How much of this room is funded?
The entire room.
A third of all of Bell County, Kentucky school district funding in 2021 came from federal sources. A CNN analysis found the 15 states that most rely on federal funding for its public schools in 2022 all voted for Trump.
And I voted for President Trump.
I mean, you're an educator. You didn't vote for Trump eliminating federal funds.
No, I did not vote for that. I voted for President Trump to make America first again. I do not think that's what the voters want. If we have federal cuts, then that's going to mean bigger classroom sizes. I would lose teachers, first and foremost. It's devastating for this school in particular.
I don't think that anyone in our county wants to cut our school funding. I don't think that anyone voted for that.
Do you mind if I ask who you voted for in the election?
I voted for Donald Trump.
You did vote for that. And all of the information was there. Project 2025, the fascist manifesto put out by the Heritage Foundation, contains all of the information people needed. And a lot of us were talking about it in detail, in explicit detail. And it was also obvious, despite the fact that Donald lied about it, that he was going to follow that playbook because he doesn't have one of his own. All he needed to know was that doing so would enrich him and give him more power, because that's all he cares about. He doesn't give a shit about our children or whether or not or how they're educated. And I don't want to pile on here, but could somebody please tell me what it means to make America first again? We've never been first in the things that matter. We've been first in things like maternal mortality rates, corruption, I don't know, anti-democratic behaviors, electing really horrific people. Yeah, we're great at those things. Racism, we're awesome at that. Misogyny. But education, healthcare, anything having to do with making this country or this world a better place, we are far from first, and we always have been. If you think schools are worried about money now, let's talk about businesses. Target, the store, warns of profit hits due to Donald's trade war with China, citing quote-unquote tariff uncertainty as a major factor impacting its first quarter outlook. Q1 began on February 2nd, 2025. Target's reliance on Chinese imports has dropped from 60% in 2017 to 30% today, but the company is still vulnerable as over 75% of its sales come from imported general merchandise. Business leaders are frustrated with Donald's trade policies, with Yale's Jeffrey Sonnenfeld reporting that 80% of CEOs privately admit to apologizing to international partners for Donald's erratic approach. You better hope that Donald doesn't know about that apology, Target, or you might be in more trouble than you're already in. Donald met with the Business Roundtable CEO group this week as corporate leaders attempt to navigate economic uncertainty caused by his tariffs, as well as his mental instability. Target reported a 3% decline in fourth quarter net sales and stated that February's performance was soft after civil rights leaders called for a boycott during Black History Month due to the company's shift in DEI policies, which is a decision that was made to appease Donald Trump. How is that appeasement working out for you? Additional boycotts are expected, including a faith-based 40-day fast during Lent and a People's Union boycott from the June 3rd to June 9th. Watch this clip from Local News 5, Cleveland.
Clevelanders signed up for the 40-day Target fast. Saturday evening, crowds of people from the Black Contractors Group and Cleveland chapter of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference protested in front of the Steelyard Commons Target, holding signs and Pan-African flags with the goal of spreading this message.
We're urging everybody not to buy from Target.
The boycott against Target came after the company discontinued some of their diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, citing the importance of staying in step with the evolving internal landscape, while reiterating its commitment to inclusion and belonging.
It's devastating to all of us,
leading some people to stop supporting the popular retail store.
I used to shop at Target. I'm not going to be shopping there anymore.
Target is one of many Fortune 500 companies that rolled back their DEI initiatives in response to President Donald Trump's threats to investigate companies' DEI efforts.
Stuff like that works. Stop shopping at Target, stop shopping at Walmart, stop shopping at Home Depot, et cetera, et cetera. Shop at places like Costco, companies that are walking the walk. Now, I know that's not possible for everybody because in allegedly the greatest country on the planet, there are things called food deserts, and some people only have access to stores like Target, for example. All right, you have to shop. So if that's your option, take it. If, however, you do have the luxury of choice, just do not give these people your money because they only care about their bottom line. And luckily for us, they're deeply misguided and are actually the ones who are harming that bottom line more than anyone else, but we can pile on and help it go faster. Overall, most swing voters already sense that they made a huge mistake in the last election cycle. I mean, I'd say better late than ever, but that's not actually true. Engages, in partnership with Sego and Axios, conducts monthly online focus groups with U.S. adults who voted for Joe Biden in 2020 and then voted for Donald in 2024, which is the kind of mental gymnastics I just cannot fathom. The respondents live in the 7 most competitive states in the 2024 election. And in a recent focus group, buyer's remorse really came to the fore. Play the clip.
I feel like a lot of his actions have just been disruptive and creating chaos. And, you know, the same sentiment that, you know, he campaigned on lowering prices and making things more affordable for working class people, which he's moving in the opposite direction.
It sounds like a number of you are surprised by what he's doing. How can you be surprised?
I don't feel like he was this aggressive last time because I don't think anyone would have voted for him if they expected to see what we're seeing now.
This decline that I've seen, worse than just our previous presidency, is quite significant. So that's kind of where I was voting for him based off of the economy the first time around, and I'm seeing a significant decline versus even just the previous presidency.
Yeah, I didn't see this coming. I didn't think he was going to take these points of views that he's taking. And that was like the surprise for me, I guess.
I'm personally not a fan of people treating people poorly. And I feel as a leader, you have to lead with as much grace and class as possible. And also because he has tried to wipe away a lot of the foundation and truth that this country was built upon as if it didn't exist.
Okay. That is sobering. The things these people claim to look for in leaders has never been evidenced by Donald Trump, ever. We've talked a lot about being in the finding out phase. Well, the first part of that is the fuck around phase, right? And we've seen that in action. People who believed that Donald would be cruel to the right people and just thought that they were immune. Well, that's despicable. That's fucking around. And finding out is when your immigrant wife gets detained because maybe you're not so special and immune after all. But you know what else is fucking around? Not paying attention. As Americans, the franchise is one of our most precious rights, and we have a responsibility to it and to the future of this country. And that means paying attention. And so many of us failed to do that. So hopefully people are finding that out. And we just have to hope that they continue to pay attention.